Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com. Debate physics. Yeah, I wish. .com also, but yes, you just can't get anyone to participate in some sort of argument about what the evidence, okay, what facts you can research and, what experiments you can actually show, what it demonstrates the physical universe, reality, to be describable as, what the evidence points to, what the detectives should all agree on, okay, as reasonable conclusions that can be drawn based on the evidence. And so there's lots of subjects like what is energy, and what is matter, and all this kind of stuff. And it just gets more and more complicated. You start talking about what these things can do. And so there's a pretty large volume of thoughts, concepts to deal with. Scalar versus vector, whatever the hell that one is. But they all come down to something like that. Some kind of fake notion, waving stuff. Push versus pull. I mean, it's that simple, really. Where you can make a rational argument that there are two distinctly different things. And conceptually, that push is really easy to imagine and construct, and pull not so fucking easy. Anyway, Professor Dave has made a video bitching, and it's just such little bitchy shit about Sabine Hossenfelder as if she's some horrid heretic. Basically, pigeonholing her in the same crowd as if she was sympathetic with the science deniers. They're in the vein of like the electric universe is one of the more direct comparisons he's making. And, these are agenda whore kind of people, okay? I mean, the electric universe is about some holistic story about how humans were better off, in caves, thinking it was all magic. Or they want to go, they have a whole agenda, okay, that somehow modernism has corrupted some, the beautiful adventuring, of the humans that only lived 25 years. Anyway, I mean, it's just such crap. But it has an agenda, okay? And so there's lots of people out there, the creationists are trying to do their, flat earth, God did it story. So these are all easy to out kind of people with agendas who are against the narrative merely because it's not consistent with their more archaic and primitive narrative. Instead of being against it because it's crappy science. So what Sabine has done, a tiny percentage of her videos, is pointed out the little bits of corruption and shenanigans that are part of science and really shouldn't be. But she hasn't even touched this subject. I mean, you could go on and on about all the money the National Science Foundation spends and how much of it has anything to do with science and how much it really has to do with the military saying, well, can we exploit it somehow? And that really decides, whether something's going to get the money. Does it have some potential to create a death ray? Because that's all the military wants, a death ray, get real. And they want to eavesdrop. So obviously gravitational wave machines get built for billions of dollars because they have some sort of, we can use this maybe to do some other kind of listening. Now, there's no evidence it really works for any of that crap, which is the funny part. It's deaf and dumb and a waste of money and all of that crap. But yeah, so there's a lot of corruption in science. And listen, I'm just saying that the biggest corruption is as scientists are incapable of any kind of self-monitoring regulation kind of thing in terms of stopping themselves from just going on bizarre and idiotic tangents for no good reason except because it sounds good. So, I mean, you can go all the way back to the controversy about kinetic energy, you know, the formula mv squared versus mv. Newton argued for momentum being the controlling mechanism. Very simple idea that you just take the mass and the velocity, and that will tell you how much energy something has. Big things can carry lots of energy with small velocities, and small things need big velocities to carry the same energy. I mean, not complicated. Third law that basically says the cannonball has the same energy as the cannon released, okay, in the opposite direction, in the sense retained. And if it gives away that, it has to, it has extra this, you know, from its balance state. So a kind of a really great concept, completely ruined by kinetic energy. It just obliterates the third law as meaning anything. And they take no accountability. They don't explain how that was a good move, that the evidence compelled them to do so, because they have zero, I mean literally zero evidence. There's just no evidence it takes 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. I can't get a single one of these professional scientists, you know, to, you know, counter-argue and explain how it's a great deal of evidence and how they well established it. And there were many brilliant papers written about how it does take 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast, when there's nothing, zero. So anyway, and you can just go on and on. You know, wave-particle duality, a complete misunderstanding of what photons are. They don't understand what gravity is. They don't understand thermodynamics. They don't understand any of it. Entropy, you know, any of this nonsense. They have gotten all wrong. They've jumped to wrong conclusions, and they have literally jumped. So anyway, so Sabine makes a couple of videos where she indicates that maybe science isn't all that. And scientists need to clean up their act a little. Lots of bullshit papers written for bullshit reasons. Lots of investment driven by lots of motivations besides what science needs to do to understand something. A bunch of self-interest, bunch of physicists who need to keep their jobs at CERN, you know, and they need a new accelerator because they've done this one already, and this one can only do certain things, and that's all it can do. So it's already done its little clown act, and now it's a useless pile of whatever, $25 billion junk. So anyway, so there's a context to this, and it's anyway, so he's making this. He makes it. I don't know how long this video is, like fucking 35 minutes long. He doesn't say anything really. He just goes on a tirade about how, you know, the authorities know what they're doing, and everything's just fine. Science is working just great, and it's producing so much. And bullshit. The science isn't producing anything. Quantum computing isn't producing anything. Quantum mechanics isn't producing anything. Your phone's getting better by little incremental steps of people just improving software and you know, miniaturizing the hardware, and none of that needed quantum mechanics. It's just the world just runs on lies and bullshit. So anyway, it's worth playing some of this diet. He goes on this diatribe here where he just rags and rags about a few little tiny words, a few moments where you know, Hossenfelder concedes, well, look, I've been in these jobs, I've done this fake research, I've done this waste your time nonsense. So don't tell me it doesn't exist because I got a paycheck doing it.
Switzerland couldn't find an academic job at first, so in order to make a living, he had to look for any job that would hire him. He settled on a position as a clerk in the Swiss Patent Office, and the rest is history. The boring and easy job gave his mind plenty of time to think about his doctoral thesis and other revolutionary ideas, and in 1905 he changed the world with his 3 big papers of that year.
So anyway, so whether he changed the world in a positive way, so let's just understand that he didn't die a happy camper. He wasn't pleased at all with what happened to the science from 1915 on, frankly. He opposed pretty much everybody's interpretation of what he had created, so to speak. And the important paper, you know, the one that basically was arguing that you can quantize and particleize the elemental function of electromagnetic radiation was basically ignored.
Even top minds sometimes struggle. That's life. Blaming the scientific community for this is disingenuous.
So, she's not blaming the scientific community for the fact that she has a real experience where chauvinism was part of it and where the rest of it was all driven by the fact that this is about money. And you have to produce something, and it's really not about science. And even if it was about science, I don't know that she has the courage to say it, there's only 5 or 6 people that are controlling the agenda, okay? The whole agenda is being controlled by these laureates, okay? The people they have glorified, and they all have to follow the agenda, of whatever, those 100 people who get to define what the truth is.
But I knew...
And any research outside of that closed little understanding, outside of that religion, isn't going to get funded. The Catholic Church isn't going to fund evolution research. It's not going to geology. They're not going to fund it.
It was bullshit, just as most of the work in that area is currently bullshit, and just as most of academic research that your taxes pay for is almost certainly bullshit.
Yeah, it's a bunch of crap about some phantom particles, phantom matter, phantom this, phantom that, a bunch of phantom notions about some, antimatter. All this stuff is such crap. And it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of brains, but it's part of the Catholic agenda, the religion of science, because it is completely unevidenced, wooey nonsense. Let's go spend $1 billion to go try to make a wormhole. I mean, it's all such bullshit.
This is the problematic language. No.
So no one's allowed to say your science isn't very efficient, that it wastes a ton of money because it doesn't really analyze in some forum. It doesn't really think it through and debate it in an open manner. No, there's this closed group, okay, who get to decide. The National Science Foundation asked 3 people, Elon Musk, some other asshole, some other rich asshole, some other asshole, and says, what do you want to spend money on? That's, what can you make money on? I mean, the very idea, the whole thing has just gotten so corrupt. I mean, NASA doesn't do any science because NASA, if NASA actually did the science, it has to create a bunch of government employees. Everybody gets to be a government employee who works for NASA, and therefore they have to pay insane wages and gigantic benefits, and you can't do any work. So the NASA can't fly us to the moon anymore because it's too expensive, because the unions take over. I mean, it's, there's just this pragmatic crap that's in the way, and it's not a sin for somebody to point out that that's the corruption.
It is not the case that the majority of scientific research is bullshit.
Well, wait, 54%, 59%. I mean, what's the percentage number do you have to come up with? So I'm going to point out that all the money wasted on, quantum computing will never produce a useful anything, and all the money wasted on, fission is going to be likewise a waste of time, because pushing things together doesn't make energy. Breaking things apart makes energy. Pushing things together doesn't make energy.
This is something science deniers say.
He's associated just because she claims it's just, in her experience, it doesn't look very productive. It doesn't look like a great way to spend science money. It doesn't look like they're spending it in the right places. She's not allowed to say it, or she's a science denier. I mean, it's just so, I don't know why this guy is such an institution defender. I don't know what his experience was. Was he an actual professor somewhere? What jobs has he actually had? I mean, it seems like he's more into biology than he is physics. So it's a different field, so maybe there's more opportunity because there's all kinds of biological research that has all this human potential. Lots of drug research, all kinds of stuff. People are desperate to live forever. All those, so there's lots of money in that racket.
Most of it is not revolutionary. Most of it is irrelevant to the general public, or in Thomas Kuhn's language, normal science. But it is not bullshit. It's
well, I'm just saying it's obviously bullshit in the sense that since Newton, it's just been make up something, don't prove it, and just convince everybody it's true. So in that sense, it's all bullshit. Entanglement is bullshit. Superposition is bullshit. Faster than light, bullshit. I mean, all this stuff is bullshit. All right, this warp drive crap, bullshit. Neutrinos, bullshit. Antimatter, bullshit. No evidence, and it should be there, and it's not there. Not doing the Eddington experiment from space when it takes literally 5 minutes of a good camera's time. There's 400 times better resolution, huge advantage, always clear skies, never a cloudy day. I mean, it's just bullshit that it's never been done.
Just science, which fills in gaps in our knowledge a little bit at a time.
So the whole point is what gaps is it filling? The gap between woo and wooey are gobbledy and gook. I mean, there's no gaps that are real gaps because it's not real physics. Again, you measured the weight of the electron using 1/2 mv squared. Well, what if there's no mv squared, if there's no v squared, if that was bullshit, and what you have to do is actually measure the momentum of the electron to find its mass, well, then you have an answer that's completely different than your answer. And then you can actually calculate that we are actually the weight of our electrons and protons, because now the electron has a real weight instead of a weight that was 1,000 times, maybe many thousand times less than it should have been.
It's researchers expanding the scope of their field in tiny increments.
Right. Well, again, this tiny increments it's really not, and it's all you got to make a distinction between the part of science that ends up being like the discovery of the blue LED, which was basically one guy who spent 2 decades trying all kinds of different things. Okay. And getting lucky, and so we learn from that. We learn how you can get lucky if you try enough experiments. It's probably as good to say that he, just like Madame Curie, he had some idea that the answer was there, and he knew he could get to it eventually. He just had to find the right mixture. He knew you just had to stir this thing, maybe 50 times or 100 times, maybe it's 97 times, and one of those is going to work. So it's good. It's good engineering science, but I mean, again, the ones driven just by the need for us to make the wheel rounder is a little different than us discovering the triangle, or discovering some new thing versus just improving the existing thing.
Applying a particular chemical reaction to a slightly different starting material, collecting an...
I mean, science ends up getting mixed up in this pursuit of greater efficiency. So you could argue that science took us from stagecoaches to limousines. But it's not really what the subject of science is, which is science is this pursuit of understanding, not the pursuit of a more comfortable ride.
Indexing thousands of archaeological...
And look at the price that was paid for some of it being pretty bad science, in the sense that, yes, we found out how we can exploit oil and coal and these substances, but we didn't do the good science to realize that they are creating side effects that are going to make their efficiency look kind of ridiculous in hindsight, in the sense that it wasn't a very good choice. Because you could make the argument that, in a sense, global warming is going to be worse than Fukushima. That this is going to be one of the prices you pay for your expedience rather than doing good science.
artifacts, performing taxonomic identification of...
I don't know what all this has to do with her simple critique. Like she said, all science is garbage. She didn't say that. She said the money-driven science is tainted, and it is likely to be just bullshit, okay, because it's about attracting dollars, and the only thing that attracts dollars is stuff not like this, okay? You really don't get a whole bunch of federal money to do taxological studies of butterflies. So if you want to show me where a bunch of government money got thrown at butterfly taxometry, okay, that would be an argument, but I bet you there hasn't been. I bet you the last 40 years they haven't spent much money on that. The National Science Foundation hasn't financed too many butterfly chasers.
Of new species of butterflies. Most scientific output is kind of boring, even for people who are familiar with the field. That does...
Well, that would even make you think, why the fuck are you doing it then? It should never be boring, boldly going, building your enterprise, building a warp drive, and blah, blah, blah. None of that should be boring.
Doesn't make it bullshit. It's true that sometimes papers reach incorrect conclusions.
So again, sometimes when people look at this stuff, it's like these editors don't care about the truth. They just care about the agenda and the stuff that hypes the agenda, hypes the quantum crapola, all of the bullshit that the establishment has accepted as the truth. That's the only thing that's going to get any kind of, yes, your paper passes because you don't have to prove anything because you're not disproving anything. So if you don't attack our theory, we'll publish you. If you attack any notion on our theory, we're not going to publish you. And that's the simple rules. Okay, they're not going to be... They're not going to have their dogma, okay, knocked down. And the Catholic Church is not going to, okay, teach evolution. It's just not going to do it.
And sometimes these aren't corrected for years. It depends on the attention that it attracts. The more groundbreaking the work...
Yeah, so again, this groundbreaking crap, and we know every one of these groundbreaking announcements always turns to shit. So we know all of this hype, and the whole idea is to say something outrageous, promise the world. We've seen all these all this venture capitalist money goes into something. They promise everything, and they deliver nothing. Huge, giant, expensive overrides. It's bullshit.
The more likely it is to be scrutinized and therefore either refuted or confirmed. Science does not always advance in a perfectly straight line.
Yeah, and she's not arguing that it should be perfectly straight, but she's arguing that it's obviously got the percentage of value to waste is too high. The waste is too high, unacceptably high, and it takes all the fun out of science if the only thing that's going to get financed is, the agenda of 100 people who are substantially controlled by a bunch of special interests, okay, that really aren't science.
Scientists are people just like everyone else, subject...
So again, that's kind of silly to say. See, I mean, that would... my argument is that intelligent people, okay, scientists really have to be intelligent because you got to be intelligent to pass the test, to know all the little details. Now, they don't necessarily have to know all the details. That's the problem. They're not going to watch my videos and get the truth about two-slit experiments and all this other stuff. But anyway, they still have to acquire an awful lot of knowledge. And you would just think, when you acquire a lot of knowledge, that you're not going to think lying is a great idea. So you figure scientists aren't going to be lying pieces of douchebag shit. And that's the surprise part, that they are scheming, conniving, cowardly douchebag shit like you, Professor Dave. You're a frickin' coward, okay? You're afraid to have your science really scrutinized, and you're pretending that you've defeated the very idea that you're standing on quicksand, okay? That somehow, because you've debunked creationists, therefore your science has integrity, when the fact is their agenda is garbage. And if they were really scrutinizing your science, then they would win the argument, because your science is indefendable as theirs. You're just as flat an earther as they are, in the sense that you believe in all kinds of fake and phony ideas, like entanglement, like antimatter, like dark matter, like, you know, you just keep going down, and, you know, the big one is fake energy.
To wishful thinking, bias, error, and once in a while, even dishonesty. That's not a science problem, it's a people problem.
Yeah, and so you still pointed out that if it's corrupting science, is, you know, I mean, you're just saying that, yes, obviously you would think intelligent people would be a lot less vulnerable, okay, to Homer Simpson syndrome or something, you know, sloppy, stupid. You think that wouldn't be part of their agenda. And then you find out, okay, that way too many scientists really, you know, they passed the test, but they really didn't understand the material.
The system always eventually corrects itself, and
oh, so where's the evidence that these systems ever get corrected? When did we ever achieve anything close to any kind of utopian mechanism? If we had some place where we actually did it right, then we wouldn't could be doing it wrong. We'd just stay in the place where it's done right. So this idea that there's all this fixing of mistakes is just kind of bullshit. The mistake of religion still hasn't been fixed. You know, fabiology, and you're just endorsing it. You're just defending the very idea of belief without evidence.
Science advances. Let's see what else we can find.
So that's all this looks like, is that you're just willfully and deliberately trying to find some reason to diss Sabine, okay, over a tiny little bit of commentary she's made where she talks about the fact that it's been tough to navigate her career in physics. And look what she ends up being, you know, a puppet, you know, on the puppet show, you know, YouTube, doing this, whatever it is, this populist science, you know, where you just watch your little view numbers go up if you say the right words.
Scientific progress is slowing down. But why? And the thumbnail reads, "Is science dying?" I'm sorry, this is preposterous.
So again, in the current circumstance, it's hardly preposterous, because frankly the Industrial Revolution does look like it's waning. We don't have flying Dick Tracy garbage cans. Yeah, we don't have a lot of stuff. Yeah, we have cell phones and the internet, but even the internet is suck. Just like cable TV got turned into crap, right? It had everything and everything was great, and then the populists again took over. They started running commercials, and it became again who you're talking to. The only people who are going to be convinced by the commercials are morons, so all of the content turned into content for morons, because they're the only people paying the price. The only people paying for the television were the morons. The only ones financing it are the morons. So the content goes to the morons' common denominator. These are real things that happen that destroy credibility and functionality, and he's pretending these critiques have no value, no meaning at all, and if you dare to say it, you're anti-science. What a pile of crap. All right. Die, you stupid science. So this isn't what she says at all. Then the super dumb thing I want to believe will be true. And again, isn't that all that science is defending? Michio Kaku, you know, these people, and you know, Brian Greene, all of this wooey bullshit, string theory. What the fuck? It shouldn't even be a conversation. It's so abstract and disconnected from anything indicating it does anything of value that in any way explains an electron and a proton interacting. Somehow it gives us insight. It gives nothing. It produces nothing. I mean, this is such crap. The agenda of physics is crap.
Again, look at this from the perspective of the science denier who desperately wants all of science to be wrong.
And again, how is that, you know, they're still stuck with, they're going to try to demonstrate that God done it. And that ain't going to work, okay? It's never going to work for any enlightened mind. So any mind that's heard the better theory isn't going to fall for that. unless they've personally talked to Mohammed or something and gotten, they have some delusion. The dog told them so. They're really not going to have a hard time discriminating between the stuff backed by evidence and the stuff backed by bullshit.
If only empirical knowledge didn't exist, then my ridiculous conspiratorial fantasies could spread their wings and fly.
All right, this is just because she is saying something about the idea of it's not Newton's world anymore, and the way science is done isn't being done in a way where even all these different disciplines don't communicate with each other. There's clearly no, the scrutiny doesn't exist. It's just the agenda of the publications. But she's a defender of the publications. She's a defender of, because they published her crap. That's that's why she's a defender of it.
Without any challenge from reality. If science died...
So none of this is anything she said. So this is just such bullshit tactic to sit there and smear her with saying a bunch of things she didn't say. She's just saying that it just seems like science is pursuing a lot of issues and questions that have zero practical, foundational, let's go somewhere from there. They're fake plateaus that give you no advantage for the next climb. There's nowhere to go from there. The roads don't connect to the highway.
I can replace it with my pseudoscience, and this scientist lady says it's true, so I'm going to click and pretend to listen, even though the conclusion I want to take away from it is already set in stone.
Right, so if you're against a new super collider costing trillions of dollars, somehow you're a science denier and hater, because you recognize that maybe they won't discover anything of any value.
Is a foldable phone a breakthrough invention? Is gradually cramming more and more pixels and transistors into headsets a sign of progress? Aren't machines on the moon more of an engineering feat than a scientific revelation? Is this the end of science?
Well, see, that's the point, right? The science is trying to dig into the universe and find out how it works, and the answers seem to be coming out of science that are more complicated than the question you asked. And so there's it's like it's a negative product. You ask a simple question, you get an impossibly complex answer that could take years to dissect all the questions it creates. So one question ends up just creating more questions rather than any frickin' answers. And that's because the physics is all wrong. That's because the foundation is garbage. mv squared is garbage. The idea that gravity isn't a force is garbage. The idea that there's some framing, some ability to frame yourself out of reality is garbage. That time is a dimension, it's garbage. And she's feeling some of that. She doesn't understand that that's the problem, okay? But she's sensing, hey, this doesn't look like we're going anywhere in terms of understanding functionality. And all we're doing is, science is now gimmicks. Science is contraptions. It's not about understanding, because the understanding isn't improving. It's unimproving. It's getting less visible, and the noise and the fog and the clouds and the disassociations and the complexity, the lost in math, is just that. It's all a bunch of forky symbols that don't really mean anything rational or relevant or real.
I've talked about this a few times previously, and I do think science is in big trouble indeed.
Again, this is just...
So what a horrible... She's just not allowed to say that, yes, the science does seem dark energy, dark matter. I mean, all this fluffy, maybe the Invisible Man did do it. Maybe we can, cut a hole through the universe and get into another universe. I mean, it does sound like a bunch of crap right on its face. And there's a ton of science, wasted on quantum computing.
Just ridiculous. She listed 2 random products and then concluded that science isn't doing anything.
No, she was just giving an illustration of what are we getting out of science? Better hair conditioner? I mean, what exactly, what is it accomplishing? I mean, even our longevity is sort of peaked, right? I think it's doing this thing. It's not, it's not, we're not living longer every year anymore.
This would be unfair to express even about her own field, but extending that to every other field with their respective frontiers that she knows nothing about is extremely...
Well, how many of them are these things pursuing elemental knowledge? So there's not too many. I mean, how many biologists are actually working on, modeling abiogenesis? I mean, it would be like what? 0.01% or something, 1 in 1,000. Very small percentage of the science research is devoted to any of these foundational subjects. You still haven't measured 4 pounds dropped 1 foot, 1 pound dropped 4 feet. You still haven't done that experiment, let alone any other experiments to prove any of your silly assertions that 8-pound bowling balls going 16 miles an hour somehow have twice the magical scalar energy of a 16-pound ball going 8. Now, where do you have any? You don't have any evidence. You never did the experiment. You haven't spent any time even pondering the fucking question, and yet you're, don't dare even suggest we might be full of shit.
Arrogant and unreasonable.
With this measure, they find that the research productivity has steeply decreased since the 19th.
Look, she even has a statistic to sort of defend the idea that, the bang for the buck is decreasing. It's a stock market kind of crash. What's so offensive about just sort of making the argument that, yes, the Industrial Revolution had a nice trend in it, and now it's fallen. And even you could argue that what's going to happen with the integrated circuits, right? They were always talking about how you get this quadratic increase, in the power of your PC every 2 years and blah, 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 blah. And, all of that comes to an end.
60s and 70s. From the way that they've defined it, this means that of all the scientists alive, fewer and fewer are contributing to key discoveries. They looked at 45 million.
Right. The fewer and fewer scientists are getting paid to pursue issues like, well, let's go see if we can find some proof for that MV squared crap. There's nobody doing it, okay? They haven't done any of the experiments. None of the foundational stuff has ever been secured with evidence. They haven't car crashed. We had to wait for the Mythbusters to do it. So we have one little piece of evidence that the Mythbusters produced, a TV show produced. Did scientists produce it? No, a TV show produced it.
Million papers stretching back to 1945, as well as 3.9 million patents, and at how often those papers and patents were cited.
It's amazing that here she provides all this research to back up her statement that there is kind of a malaise, as Jimmy Carter would put it, that has infected technology and you could argue what you can get out of a scientist in terms of what innovation and modification of theory actually gets you a productive new road to travel. I don't know how to, there's probably some great analogy using roads, and it's just explaining that we're losing efficiency. We're pouring a lot of asphalt, but we're not getting to any location. We're just kind of circularly traveling around the golf course, and we're not really exploring the universe. We're not boldly going where no one's gone before. You could even argue there was peak TV, and now it's all kind of that the formula has now worn off. We've done it every way you can do it, and there's no other way to do it. So you're all done being imaginative.
Then they measured whether a new paper or patent made citations to earlier work redundant, which they say is a sign of a disruptive breakthrough. Using this metric, they found clear evidence that both papers and patents have become less disruptive over time in all areas that they looked at.
This all may seem reasonable at face value, but there's a lot of nuance missing. First of all, it is far easier to attain breakthroughs in a nascent field. The more a field has developed, the harder it is to do something revolutionary.
Well, whatever that even means. I mean, you can all, I mean, look, Richard Feynman was so proud of, look, it's, well, first we only had like 0.1 decimal places, then we had 0.2, then we had 15 decimal places, then we had 35 decimal places. So you can always play that game, you know, and get more and more decimal places and more accurate, and more polish, and more blah, blah, blah. But yes, to a certain point, once you've got the wheel, you know, pretty much perfectly round, you're done, you know, making round wheels, and now you got to find a different job.
The harder it is to innovate. When it comes to physics, chemistry, biology, and other well-established fields.
So well-established by what? Dogma. And that's the tragic part. And again, this isn't about the other scientists. You know, the other sciences aren't nearly as phantasmagorically wooey nonsense. You don't hear biologists talking about how we, you know, evolved from, you know, alien mushrooms or something. You know, the amount of, you know, antimatter type speculation doesn't show up in the other disciplines. And probably partly because they have no theoretical departments. There's no such thing as theoretical biology or theoretical chemistry even. It really is. The only place they get to play this theoretical game is in physics.
That have enjoyed several centuries of development, it's just not as easy to break new ground as it once was. That's the nature.
No, it's the fact is you can't keep building higher if your foundation is garbage. And the fact is you've reached the limits your foundation can produce. Your nonsense foundation has sealed your fate. That your physics has nowhere to go because of the bad place you're building it on, what the mush you've built it on. It'll sink. So as soon as you build anything on top of it, it can't keep growing because there's nothing real supporting it. So all it ends up being is wooey storytelling
of the scientific process.
I mean, that's all you have is wooey stories. You don't have any physics.
And this graph goes all the way back to 1750, a time when we didn't even know that atoms and molecules exist. So it's not a fair comparison.
Well, it's certainly fair because, frankly, they had so much. They also had a limited world they were working in. So I don't even think that's a fair statement. But whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to go through all that research. It's just the point is it's a fair critique to argue that science has just become a tool of industry and it doesn't have any, you know, or the military or somebody else's agenda. If it's not part of some agenda, it's not science. I mean, the science of going to Mars or something, you know, the science of, oh, we gotta somehow build this monster spaceship to do something that's useless and pointless. I mean, it's a real scientific question whether there's any point at all human beings going anywhere when we can build perfectly functional droids to do the work for us. What the fuck do you need to send a human anywhere for?
Fast forwarding to modern day, not everything has to be a breakthrough in order to advance the field. Sometimes a singular breakthrough occurs, and this will shine a spotlight on a particular new area that needs to be explored.
I don't know. I don't even know. Frankly, I don't even know how you recognize what these breakthroughs are. And again, every breakthrough I hear about are kind of blue LED breakthroughs that didn't have anything to do with science. They had to do with one scientist and some special circumstance where they, you know, but the institution, it wasn't part of the institution. It was something anti-institution that produced it. The blue LED wouldn't exist playing by the rules. A guy had to sit there and basically tell his employer, fuck you. You spent all this money. We might as well go all the way. I'm halfway there. It's silly to stop now. I'm almost got it. So fuck you. Go ahead and fire me. Do whatever the fuck you want. But I'm going to keep doing this because I'm almost there. And then the fucking company fucked him. You know, after he invents the thing, and you know they were lucky enough to still have him in their employ, so they could claim ownership of it, and they didn't want to pay him. I mean, just, you know, the system showed it doesn't give a shit about the science. It's just about the money.
Such that hundreds or even thousands of...
I mean, the guy got the Nobel Prize, for fuck's sake. All right, so just understand, he gets a Nobel Prize, and he should get the prize for having to endure, okay, the institutions that are financing science, because those institutions don't give a shit about the truth, and they don't give a shit about achieving goals. They just give a shit about making money.
Researchers can work on that new area for several decades to catch up to new theories. The better we understand nature, the harder it is to come up with results that revolutionize.
So again, that's just saying, you're just saying words. The better we no, the problem is you don't understand. That's why it's harder. The more you understood it, the more right answers you had, the more right answers in your foundation, the further you can go with the science, and the less far you can go with bullshit. Okay, I mean, the flat earthers are not going to land on the moon, obviously. No chance.
Our conception of nature. It's as simple as that. It gets a lot.
Yeah, it's not that simple. Fuck you. I mean, this is just such a pointless. Like I said, I have no regard for Sabine Hossenfelder, but this is such. You're just wondering what the fuck motivated this guy. Is he a chauvinist? Is that it? He doesn't like the competition? She's stealing some of his views or something? I mean, what's this about? Because it seems so out of proportion. Preposterously out of proportion.
Lot worse. Here's a video called "This is Why Physics is Dying," and a frustrated Sabine is on the thumbnail exclaiming, "Still the same crap."
It's exactly the same crap as with string theory and supersymmetry and inflation and dark sectors and many other research bubbles in the foundations of physics. It's mathematical fiction. It's nothing to do with reality anymore. I don't...
Yeah, so I wish she actually believed that. Oh, that's the funny part. But yes, all of this crap is just crap. It's just somebody says there's an invisible man, and then they decide to spend a bunch of money and go looking for his footprints. I mean, they're making neutrino detectors. You know, their whole premise is that this is some kind of undetectable thing, and they're going to go detect it anyway. You know, but it's you know, it's an invention. There's no neutrinos. It's like making a hobgoblin detector. How much money you can't, you know, you could just waste money for 1 trillion years trying to make a hobgoblin detector.
Understand why people get paid for doing this.
Sabine is sounding like Wall Thornhill again.
So again, these silly comparisons. Obviously, her agenda is not his agenda. Obviously, she has a passion for physics. Obviously, she believes a good deal of the gobbledygook and bullshit, because she spends hours and hours making all these videos defending the, you know, convoluted logic and insipid math of this crazy, silly woo physics. So hardly a threat.
Complaining about how physicists get paid to do math.
I recently heard Eric Weinstein say in a video that we're seeing the beginning of a collapse in the foundations of physics because it's so obvious now that string theory was a huge mistake. I think...
And the joke is what was string theory? It was nothing. It was, when did this ever... Who spent any money on string theory? In one day, they spent more money on quantum computers than anybody ever spent on string theory. So this was never a real competitor. It was always known as just sort of a whatever. Okay, there's 11 dimensions, blah, 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 blah. Why don't you show me some evidence? Why don't you just show me how string theory makes electrons and protons work? Show me something. Simulate something. But they didn't simulate anything. They just make little patterns on your computer screen. Look at the little worms worming. They don't show you anything. Look how they make a cardboard box. They don't show you a cardboard box made by the little worms. I mean, I'm just saying it's just silly to almost bring up string theory just because it didn't do anything. It hasn't consumed anybody's energy or time. Who wasted time on string theory? Name me the names.
You're wrong, Eric. This will keep on going and going until physics is entirely dead. What we're seeing now is just that the senior people are handing over to their students.
If you did...
Yes, it's the bullshit agenda of 100 people. There's 100 people deciding what the truth is, and all these fucking minions are sent out, to propagandize for this crap they've somehow convinced them has some kind of credibility, and it has none. I mean, the experiments don't demonstrate any of this. You can't even understand the experiments. You can't even scrutinize the experiments because there isn't any. I mean, they invented quarks because electrons deflected. I mean, this is back to Stern-Gerlach. There's an experiment. They shoot frickin' atoms through a magnetic field, and obviously the atoms move, and you end up with a pattern. And they somehow are saying this is testing electron spin. They're fucking atoms. They're not fucking electrons. And what does the spin have to do with any of this shit? Nothing. It's just complete perversion of reality. Just like when they do their silly waved crap and talk about water waves when the dynamics aren't anything similar. Single slits in water don't create a pattern. I mean, there's lots of... it's just obvious this isn't about fucking waves. But they won't be challenged. They'll just call everybody a crank and a quack. Now, look, the fact is so far they all are. Yeah, so in some respects it is in fact going to be 1 in a million. I don't know. Let's say if you have 1 million cranks, 1 million flat earthers or flat science type peoples, how many would you have to go through before you get somebody who's making an honest, rational, reasonable critique of scientific convention? And you can go on forever. So I'm arguing that gravity creates heat in planets, that it heats the planets. That's why all the planets are molten in the center, is because gravity done it. And right there we know, okay, this is about a real force. Because if it's not a real force, then you have to explain how the heat gets back into bent space, and you can't do that. All right, you have no hope of making that explanation. How do you turn infrared radiations or radiations, radiant energy from material bodies in the universe? How do you turn that radiation into bent space? And there's no answer. But yeah, most of the people critiquing aren't making good arguments. Okay, they are doing shittier religion. I mean, so it's almost like you're saying, okay, so yeah, the last scientist was Newton. And the rest since Newton and me have been assholes making up woolly shit that's unevidenced and doesn't really, making models that don't fit the evidence.
Taking on powerful...
We can get rid of that. Alright, so he says, you didn't believe me earlier when...
Sabine and Eric have something in common. There's your proof. Nobody...
Okay, so if you didn't believe me, they have something in common. Yes, there is a sort of ugliness about this. And there's obviously... Eric Weinstein is just, he's just very articulate. That is, he's acquired knowledge of the language of science, like some chat GPT thing or something. He's got some knowledge of all the vocabulary, but he doesn't understand any of it. And he certainly doesn't understand how any of it makes any sense. He's a really shitty dissident. And what he's dissident about seems to be related to his brother's agenda, which is, again, some sort of, I don't know, it has this taint of being associated with people intolerant of things that aren't very threatening. I mean, having to you know, letting a person be an asshole and leaving them alone to be an asshole is a little different than them throwing you in jail for something. You know what I mean? So it's like this is the agenda of the clock stoppers who are just can't stand the whole purple culture. And it's fine to say I don't get you. I mean, I don't get anything about black culture. I mean, there's just nothing. Nothing. The jargon, the language, it all looks like absolute shit to me. Nothing. It doesn't make any part of being human better. Okay, I can't see any value in it. No value added. All right, nothing. It's not like even, it produced a taco or something. Not that I have any use for tacos. But I just mean at least some other cultural deviations create some kind of tang. There's some kind of something you get out of that. But yeah, I have no use for it, okay? I mean, frankly, I don't pick my culture based on where I came from. I pick my culture based on where I want to go. All right? And if the place I want to go is a library and everybody's wearing glasses and doing this, and I guess I'll do that shit too. Why not? I don't mind, I don't mind bending to a culture that makes sense. I don't see any point in bending to one that makes no sense. And I'm just saying, I have those same feelings, but I'm not stupid enough to think I have any right to tell them they can't have their stupid culture. Are useless. I won't say stupid. They're unimproved, and that I'm unimpressed, and that I have no interest. I have no interest in gaining 100 pounds and being fat. Okay, I don't see the benefit. Other people think it's a glorious thing to be. That's their problem, not my problem.
He should be agreeing with Eric on anything, least of all this script about physics being hopelessly stuck because of string theory. She then goes on a very Weinstein...
So it just is kind of bullshit, okay, to argue that string theory has anything to do with anything. I distracted 4 people. 4 people. I mean, it's not... I don't even know if there's... Okay, there's Michio Kaku, who claims to be the inventor of one of the branches of string theory. And then you got the guy from Stanford, Susskind, and who else? And then Brian Greene. Yeah, 3 people. Where's the rest of them? Who else has spent more than 4 hours contemplating string theory?
Like rant, where she rattles off some physics terminology rapid fire in a way that very clearly...
So that's all you're doing. It's just a bunch of rhetoric and rapid fire, blah, blah, blah. No science, no evidence presentation, no real argument based on, anything substantive. I mean, you could argue she didn't prove science hasn't produced anything, and you didn't prove that it has.
Is not meant to convey any information.
I mean, the fact to me that it's corrupt, that it's being run by the wrong people with the wrong motivations, it's corporate science, not science. That the whole idea of it isn't Look, the fact is that it's always been kind of corrupt. I mean, there was rich noblemen who had money and they could finance science. And that's how science and art got financed, was rich people did it. Okay? And it shouldn't happen that way by their voluntary efforts to pursue the truth and understanding. I mean, we shouldn't need them to be deciding whether the whole human race invests in understanding the world better. But the problem is, if you ask the public, they're just going to say, well, let's look for hobgoblins and Jesus's bones. They'll spend trillions.
To lay people, but rather serves to proclaim, I know what I'm talking about.
In which they claim that loop quantum gravity doesn't have an issue with Lorentz invariance. There's the smallest possible area that you can have, which is proportionate.
So she's making a physics argument here, and he's complaining that she's making a physics argument explaining why she thinks something is quackery. And she's not allowed to do that? Oh, please. Too ridiculous.
to the square of the Planck length, a minimal area isn't compatible with Lorentz invariance.
And this is a subject upon which I saw this video. This is a subject in which she has written papers, okay? This is her kind of subjects. This is really important to her to keep defending Einstein's field equations and Einstein's rigid understanding of Einstein's relativity. And, her argument is all these things violate those rigid rules of relativity.
It just isn't. If you quantize the angular momentum operator, then the spectrum of eigenvalues is discrete, and that doesn't violate rotational invariance, and it works similarly in loop quantum gravity with Lorentz invariance.
So all of this gobbledygook, right, which is the joke. I mean, her channel was Science Without the Gobbledygook, and it's just gobbledygook, gobbledygook, gobbledygook. I never thought I'd ever say gobbledygook, but, whatever. You have to go where they go, if they're going to bring back, who knows what next. Groovy.
But it's so frustrating to see that this is still going on. They're still discussing the same nonsense as 20 years ago.
I'm not a physicist. I don't know if she's right or wrong.
Oh, that's why I made the video anyway. I don't like it. She's talking stuff that I don't understand. Obviously, I don't think anybody understood it. Anybody who watched the video. Let's just put it that way.
This could even be a completely valid criticism of a particular subset of physicists. That's not the point here.
Yeah, it is the point. She's making a valid criticism that a whole huge percentage of physics is lost in circular, rickety bullshit, that they've got these wooey ideas that have no hope of being the truth. They're really not going to be connected to anything hopeful. There's really no prospect that it's going to go anywhere, and they're spending the money anyway. Just like this whole fucking goddamn idea that smashing hydrogen into each other is somehow going to make energy. No, it's not.
The point is that this is bad science communication. There is nothing of substance here for the viewer to latch onto.
So, again, she's just defending her argument that the people are... This is convoluted. Look, she wrote a book called Lost in Mass. She's making the point that some of this stuff is just wooey abstractions, and it's just abstractions built on abstractions. I mean, Feynman says you can borrow energy from the future. Should anybody really do any further scientific investigation based on an idea that's dependent on you borrowing energy from the future? I mean, shouldn't that be a non-starter? Like, no, don't spend even more going down that idiotic road.
All they can do is walk away, having absorbed some kind of vague, vicarious frustration and the general sense that physics is hopelessly stuck.
So this is his argument. I haven't watched the whole video, but can you just imagine this is his good argument? I wonder what his shitty, lame, ending arguments are going to be. If this is the power argument, this is the real evidence of the murder here. Man, this just looks like petty hackery. I'm just going to make a video sure to get lots of views, pretending to, rip an asshole another asshole. And frankly, he's just sticking his head up his own ass.
Which it isn't. This whole physics hasn't done anything new in 50 years song and dance is totally meritless.
Yeah, it is true. I'm just saying, what have you done? So electromagnetic waves, gravitational waves. Now, isn't this is a great subject, right? Because have they really? And the more they spend on this thing and they get these detectors in all these different places, it's going to become more and more apparent that all this was horseshit in the beginning. That this thing can't do what they claim it's doing. Measuring 1/1000th the width of a proton. I mean, these insane arguments about how precision they have and blah, 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 blah. What a pile of crap.
In this century, we observed gravitational waves. We found the Higgs boson.
Yeah, I said whatever that even means. We found the Higgs boson. She explains in a video that the Higgs boson isn't anything. It's the Higgs field that's the thing that's playing the role. And what the fuck is that except the same as all these other retarded fields? Let's just name a particle and then have the electron field and the proton field and the this field and the that field and all these different fields, and it's all just such a pile of crap. Now, the idea that there could be an electron field and a proton field, yeah, that's a good idea. Any of these other things they've invented having fields, yeah, that's a bad idea.
We directly imaged a black hole. We experimentally determined...
Again, and all of this is suspect science. Okay, I mean, there's 2 year long to create image of the black hole. And again, she did a video on it pointing out how, oh, you know, this does look a little suspicious, where, you know, the information that built this black hole was sort of filtered to make a black hole. I mean, it's just not like the science just found a black hole. They sort of made the picture.
Determined the mass of the neutrino.
The mass of the neutrino. Sure you did. Sure you did. I mean, this is just so funny. I mean, these are all abstract notions that this is a lot worse than Stern-Gerlach or the muon experiment or all these other experiments where they make these bold conclusions out of this crap of data.
Generated Bose-Einstein condensate. We've discovered thousands of exoplanets.
And again, that's speculative. And look, they colored them and gave them clouds and gave them images, and, you know, I mean, what a pile of crap.
Physics, in all of its subdisciplines, is doing just fine.
Oh, really? It depends on what your standards are. So that's his. Well, we got an Einstein Bose-Einstein condensate thingy. What are you gonna do with it? Are you gonna smear it on toast? Let's smear some Einstein condensate, and, you know, can make a super sandwich. It'll be even better than the traditional club sandwich. It'll be so spectacular. So spectacular. Einstein Bose condensate sandwich. Yes, it'll be really good. A BZ, we'll call it. So go to your delicatessen and ask for a BZ.
Is string theory
An EBZ.
super awesome? And
see, look at these pictures. What is this crap? Oh yeah, we've drawn all kinds of silly images of wooey crap. That's all I see.
Totally valid? Who knows? I certainly don't. Maybe it will never, ever pan out.
Oh, yes, exactly. All this wooey crap has nothing to do with the truth. It's just another silly fucking religion. And frankly, you ought to just pick up the ball where the ball Newton had, okay, and play with that. Because that one's the ball that's going to end up at the end at the truth. Newton had it right. You people have it all the fuck wrong.
But it's not the only thing happening in physics, nor is it the only thing that gets funded, not by a long shot. When figures like Sabine or Eric rail against string theory, it's just a scapegoat for their anti-academia rhetoric.
Well, whatever. I mean, I think it's legitimate to say, why are we even talking about string theory? It's so wooey and stupid. So, you know, but whatever. I don't know why they aren't more critical of... Why haven't we ever dropped 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet? Why do we do that experiment? See how big a boom they make when they hit the ground? Oh, shit.
What happened instead is that everyone who works on this just repeats arguments that they all know to be wrong to keep the money coming. Because
yeah, there you go. So that's all the institutions care about, is promoting this fake idea that they're proving or demonstrating the existence of some fake idea. So, and it's all these exaggerations. You know, they've been doing this cold fusion thing and all this bullshit, you know, trying to, you know, and it's just about trying to convince people that we're almost there. So it's all like Muskie. I mean, let's build this gigantic, stupid spaceship to do this stupid thing that we can't do anyway, and that there's no point in doing it. There's no point in sending lunatics to Mars to watch, you know, 4-day-old Wi-Fi. I don't know how far Mars is. It's not 4 days, but you know. No point at all. Anyway, till the next time and such. It's just all so goddamn stupid. it's such a waste of money. I mean, if we, what's, what, why build something we really have no fucking ability to use it to do a damn thing? Gigantically heavy rockets are really stupid. All right, anyway, till the next time, and such and so forth, and whatnot. Shit. I hate this planet. Whoa. Yeah, just noticed. Yeah, I didn't have this. Sorry. I wasn't doing any drawing, so I had to change the scene, and I didn't do it. So sorry about that. So you didn't get to see. There was nothing to see anyway. It was just this kind of stuff. So he just plays a little bit of Sabine and plays some graphs, and that's it. So you didn't really miss much, and such. I mean, he's not in the video, so blah blah blah. But sorry, technical glitch. We'll call it that. We'll call it a glitch. Oh shit, gobbly glitch.